All right, so today we're taking a deep dive into Bitcoin.
Sounds good.
We're looking at this blog post. Why is Bitcoin the best investment? Answers are here. From what I understand, this blog is all about making money online.
Okay.
They cover everything from creating courses to SEO tips, but today, just Bitcoin.
Gotcha.
So our mission today is to unpack their arguments for Bitcoin and look at what the research says and see if this blog is onto something or just caught up in the hype.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good. So what's the blog's main pitch for Bitcoin as an investment?
Well, they really hammer on this idea of decentralization.
Okay.
They paint this picture of Bitcoin as this financial rebel, free from the control of any government or bank. They even say Bitcoin is shaking the world economy.
Wow. Okay.
A little dramatic.
Yeah. I mean, that's certainly attention-grabbing, but
Yeah.
when they talk about decentralization, what they're saying is that unlike traditional currencies, which are, managed by central banks, Bitcoin operates on this kind of distributed network. So picture a global network of computers all working together to verify transactions, rather than relying on a single authority.
Okay, so no one person or institution is calling the shots. That's a pretty radical concept.
Yeah.
But does that really make it a better investment?
Well, it depends on your perspective and what you're looking for in an investment.
Yeah.
If you're someone who values autonomy and you want an asset, that's less susceptible to government interference. Then Bitcoin's decentralized nature could be appealing. Think about it like this. Imagine a political crisis somewhere in the world and the government restricts access to bank accounts.
Oh, wow.
With Bitcoin, your funds would theoretically remain accessible because they're not tied to any specific bank or country.
That's a pretty compelling scenario, especially in today's world. But the blog also talks about Bitcoin's potential for growth, which I find kind of ironic given its reputation for wild price swings.
Right, yeah. That's the double-edged sword of decentralization. Because its price is driven purely by supply and demand, Bitcoin can be incredibly volatile. It can soar in value one day and plummet the next. Imagine investing, $1,000 today and seeing it jump to $1,500 tomorrow, only to drop to $800 the following week.
Yeah, talk about a roller coaster ride. So while the potential for big gains is there, it comes with a hefty dose of risk. And honestly, shaking the world economy feels a bit dramatic, even for Bitcoin.
Yeah. I think that's a bit of hyperbole. While Bitcoin has certainly disrupted the financial landscape, it's still a relatively small market compared to traditional assets. It's more like a ripple in the pond at this point, not a full-blown earthquake.
Okay, so maybe a bit of an exaggeration. But another point they emphasize is Bitcoin as an inflation hedge. With prices rising globally, that's a hot-button issue for a lot of people.
Yeah, for sure. The idea is that because Bitcoin has a limited supply, only 21 million coins will ever exist. It's immune to those inflationary pressures that can erode the value of traditional currencies.
Right.
But it's important to remember that Bitcoin's price can be influenced by a whole host of factors, not just inflation. So while it might offer some protection, it's not a guaranteed inflation buster.
So not a silver bullet solution. Got it.
Yeah.
They also talk about accessibility, making it sound like anyone can jump in and start investing in Bitcoin.
And compared to traditional investing, which often requires significant capital, and navigating complex financial systems, Bitcoin is relatively accessible.
Right.
You can buy fractions of a Bitcoin, and there are plenty of online platforms that make it easy to buy and sell. But that ease of access doesn't mean you should just throw money at it without understanding the risks.
Right. It's not like buying a lottery ticket. You still need to do your research and approach it strategically. And speaking of strategy, the blog goes on to outline 3 ways to supposedly make money with Bitcoin: trading, mining, and long-term investment.
It's interesting that they present these as distinct methods, when in reality they're all interconnected and carry their own levels of risk and reward.
Okay, so let's break those down one by one, starting with trading. The blog paints it as this fast-paced, exciting way to capitalize on Bitcoin's volatility.
And it can be. But it's definitely not for the faint of heart. Bitcoin trading involves buying and selling on exchanges, trying to time those price swings to make a profit, requires constant market monitoring, technical analysis skills, and a high tolerance for risk. Think of it like day trading stocks on steroids.
Okay, so unless you're a seasoned trader with nerves of steel, probably best to steer clear. What about mining? The blog describes it as a way to earn new Bitcoin by solving complex mathematical problems.
In the early days of Bitcoin, anyone with a decent computer could mine.
Really?
But now it's a completely different game. Think industrial scale operation.
Wow.
with specialized hardware and massive amounts of electricity. The barrier to entry is incredibly high, and the competition is fierce.
So, not exactly something you could do from your basement anymore.
Not if you want to make a profit. Unless you have access to cheap electricity and a warehouse full of high-powered computers, it's probably not worth the effort.
All right, so trading is high risk, mining is resource intensive. That leaves us with long-term investment, which the blog describes as buying Bitcoin and holding onto it for the long haul, hoping its value will go up.
Yeah, that's the buy low, sell high strategy. But with Bitcoin, figuring out what's low is tricky because its price is so unpredictable.
Yeah, it's not like you can look at a company's earnings report to gauge its value. So how do you even begin to evaluate Bitcoin as a long-term investment?
Well, it's a combination of factors, really. You have to look at the adoption rate, technological advancements, regulatory developments, and overall market sentiment. It's a lot more about betting on the future of Bitcoin and its potential impact on the world than trying to time the market perfectly.
So it's a long game with a lot of unknowns. I'm noticing a pattern here. Whether it's trading, mining, or long-term investing, making money with Bitcoin seems to involve a lot of risk and a deep understanding of this complex world.
That's a fair assessment. While the potential rewards are alluring, it's crucial to go into it with eyes wide open, understanding the risks and doing your homework.
Well said. And while this blog post definitely presents a rosy picture, it's important to remember that there's another side to the story. We'll dive into that in part 2, where we'll explore some of the criticisms and concerns surrounding Bitcoin. But before we go, I want to leave you with a question. Based on what we've discussed so far, what's your gut reaction to the blog's claim that Bitcoin is the best investment? Hold on to that thought and we'll pick it up next time. So after hearing that blog, like sing Bitcoin's praises, did any alarm bells start ringing for you?
Yeah. I imagine some listeners might be feeling a bit skeptical, and rightfully so. I think there are definitely some valid criticisms about Bitcoin that are important to address.
Okay, so if part 1 was all about the hype, let's dive into the counter-arguments. Who are the Bitcoin skeptics, and what are their main concerns?
Well, one of the most common criticisms is that Bitcoin has no intrinsic value.
Okay.
So unlike a company's stock, which represents ownership, or a bond that pays interest, Bitcoin's value is solely determined by what people are willing to pay for it at any given moment.
So it's kind of like a digital version of like those Beanie Babies everyone went crazy for back in the day.
Yeah.
People buying them up hoping they'd be worth a fortune later, but there was no real guarantee.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. Critics argue that Bitcoin is driven by speculation and hype, creating a bubble that could burst at any time. They worry that it's a house of cards built on shaky ground.
And that kind of ties into another big criticism, volatility. Even the blog post acknowledged those wild price swings. It's hard to feel confident about an investment that can drop 20% in value overnight.
Absolutely. Volatility makes Bitcoin a risky investment, especially if you're looking for short-term gains or need that money for something specific in the near future. Even long-term investors have to have a strong stomach and be prepared for a wild ride.
So while the potential for high rewards exists, the potential for big losses is right there with it.
Right.
What else do the critics point to?
Another issue is Bitcoin's limited use in the real world. While it's gained some traction as a payment method, you're not exactly seeing like Bitcoin accepted here signs popping up everywhere.
Yeah, I'm not running out to buy my groceries with Bitcoin just yet. What are the hurdles to wider adoption?
Well, for one, the transaction fees can be high and unpredictable, especially during times of high network activity. Also, the process can be slow compared to traditional payment systems.
Yeah.
Imagine waiting like 10 minutes for your coffee purchase to go through. Not exactly ideal for a quick transaction.
Yeah, I can see that being a problem.
Yeah.
And I imagine scalability is another concern, right? Like if Bitcoin were to become mainstream, could the network handle the volume?
That's a big question mark.
Yeah.
The Bitcoin network has a limited capacity for processing transactions, which can lead to bottlenecks and delays when things get busy. There are various solutions being explored, but it remains a challenge for widespread adoption. It's like a highway that can only handle so much traffic before things grind to a halt.
Okay, so we've got volatility, limited real-world use, and potential scalability issues. Are there any other major concerns on the table?
One more that often comes up is the environmental impact of Bitcoin mining. Remember all that specialized hardware we talked about?
Yeah.
Well, those computers consume enormous amounts of electricity, and critics argue that this is unsustainable, contributing to carbon emissions and climate change.
I've heard that Bitcoin mining consumes more energy than entire countries. That's a pretty stark image.
It's a complex issue with no easy answers. Some mining operations are transitioning to renewable energy sources, but the overall energy consumption of Bitcoin remains a concern for many. It's not just about the financial risks. There are ethical and environmental considerations to weigh as well.
And to be fair to the blog, they did have a section on managing risk and being aware of scams.
Yeah.
But even choosing a trustworthy platform seems like a minefield in itself.
Yeah. The cryptocurrency world is still relatively unregulated. And unfortunately, scams and fraudulent schemes are out there. It's like the Wild West of finance, so due diligence is absolutely essential.
So what advice would you give to someone trying to navigate this digital frontier?
When evaluating platforms, prioritize security above all else. Look for exchanges with a solid track record, two-factor authentication, and cold storage options for added protection. It's also wise to choose platforms that are transparent about their fees and offer good customer support in case you run into any issues.
Okay, so do your homework, look for the security features, and don't just trust any flashy website that promises quick riches. What about staying informed about the broader crypto landscape? Bitcoin isn't the only game in town anymore, right?
Absolutely not. There are thousands of other cryptocurrencies out there, collectively known as altcoins, each with its own purpose, technology, and level of risk. It can be incredibly overwhelming.
It's like walking into a candy store with a million different flavors. Where do you even begin?
Websites like CoinMarketCap and CoinGecko can be helpful for getting a sense of the overall market and comparing different cryptocurrencies. But remember, don't just chase the hype.
So no jumping on the bandwagon just because everyone else is.
Exactly. Do your own research. Understand the underlying technology and the problem a cryptocurrency is trying to solve. Look for projects with strong teams, solid fundamentals, and a clear vision for the future.
So it's about being a discerning investor, not a FOMO follower.
Precisely. And always remember, this is a highly speculative market. Invest only what you can afford to lose and be prepared for the possibility of significant price swings.
It sounds like a mix of careful research, calculated risk-taking, and a healthy dose of skepticism is the recipe for navigating this complex world. We've covered a lot of ground here, from the potential benefits and risks of Bitcoin to the broader cryptocurrency landscape. What's your biggest takeaway so far?
For me, it's the importance of informed decision-making. Whether you're leaning towards investing in Bitcoin or approaching it with caution, doing your homework is essential. Don't just rely on a single blog post, even if it has a catchy title.
Well said. And in part 3, we'll equip you with some practical tools and resources to continue your exploration of this fascinating and ever-evolving world. Okay, so we've talked about the good, the bad, and the ugly of Bitcoin. But for someone listening who wants to learn more, where should they begin? I mean, there's so much information out there.
Right. Well, there's no shortage of information.
Yep.
But finding reliable sources is key. Websites like CoinDesk and Cointelegraph are good starting points for news and analysis on the crypto market.
So kind of like checking the financial news for stock updates, but for the crypto world.
Exactly, yeah. And if you're interested in the more like financial side of things, publications like Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal also have dedicated sections covering cryptocurrency.
Okay, so staying informed is step 1. But what about the technical side? I mean, we talked about blockchain technology. Honestly, it still sounds kind of like science fiction to me.
It's definitely a complex concept, but understanding the basics can help demystify Bitcoin. Think of a blockchain like a giant digital ledger that keeps track of every single Bitcoin transaction.
Okay.
It's distributed across a network of computers, making it incredibly secure and transparent.
So no more shady backroom deals or hidden transactions. Everything's out in the open.
Exactly, yeah. And if you want to dive deeper into like the technical nitty-gritty, websites like bitcoin.org and the Bitcoin Wiki are great resources. They're like encyclopedias of Bitcoin knowledge.
Okay, so we've got the news, the tech deep dive, but what about actually buying and selling Bitcoin? Any tips for navigating that process?
Well, choosing an exchange can be a bit overwhelming, but there are some well-established platforms that are known for their security and user-friendliness. Coinbase is a popular option, especially for beginners.
So that's kind of like the training wheels of Bitcoin buying.
You could say that. They have a simple interface and lots of helpful resources for getting started. Other reputable options include Kraken and Gemini, which are known for their strong security measures.
Security is definitely a big concern. I mean, we talked about the importance of choosing a platform you can trust, but what about keeping your Bitcoin safe once you've bought it?
Right. That's where wallets come in.
Okay.
Think of a Bitcoin wallet like a digital bank account where you store your Bitcoin. There are different types of wallets, each with varying levels of security.
Okay, walk me through the options. What are the pros and cons of each type?
So software wallets, which are often provided by exchanges, are convenient for everyday transactions, but can be vulnerable to hacking if your device is compromised. Hardware wallets, on the other hand, are physical devices that store your Bitcoin offline, making them much more secure.
So kind of like keeping your cash in a regular wallet versus a safe deposit box at the bank.
Exactly. The level of security you choose depends on your individual risk tolerance and how much Bitcoin you're holding.
Got it. So we've got resources for information, platforms for buying and selling, and wallets for keeping our Bitcoin safe. But remember, Bitcoin is just one piece of the puzzle. We touched on the vast world of altcoins. Any advice for exploring that space?
Oh man, it's a jungle out there. CoinMarketCap and CoinGecko are great websites for getting a broad overview of the cryptocurrency market and comparing different coins. But as we mentioned earlier, don't get swept up in the hype. Do your due diligence.
So how do you separate the promising projects from the potential scams?
Well, look for strong teams with a proven track record, innovative technology that solves real-world problems, and a clear vision for the future. Read their white papers, understand their goals, and see if they have a solid community behind them.
It sounds like a mix of detective work and venture capital investing.
In a way, it is. But remember, the cryptocurrency market is still very young and incredibly volatile. Never invest more than you can afford to lose, and be prepared for a bumpy ride.
So I think what we've learned today is that Bitcoin and the world of cryptocurrency is a fascinating, complex, and ever-changing landscape. But it's also a space that's ripe with opportunity for those who are willing to learn, to research, and to approach it with a healthy dose of caution.
Absolutely.
We hope you enjoyed this deep dive. It was a lot of fun, and we learned a lot. And remember, the journey of discovery doesn't end here. So keep exploring, keep learning, and as always, happy investing. We'll see you next time.